Good to winter. This is Gemara and Beitzah Daf Chov Tes. Learning for this month, the month of Tishrei, has been generously sponsored as Chos Refuah Shlema for Shlomo Ben Yuta, Mir Tashem Yishav, a continued recovery, as well as Choshidah Vishal Chaim and Derish and Miriam Basir Zagitol Shen Desel Basir Shan Makal Yom Mordechai Ben Devarchin Sister Gitol Basel Bashendel, as well as Chos Refuah Shlema for Shlomo Yusuf Ben Nen Yerfein and Ben Vega Chaim Mesara, Shlomo Siv Ben Ezei Zar Bas Knended Basim Bas Chayisar Yisrael Ben Mendel the President Shalei Shlomo Asnami B'Shavik Shirchana Shmuel Ben Tiladin Mechan Rizim Chaim Asili Rochas Tom Musa Din Ein Vachin Mindas Even Vega Burn Mechalas Sunnah Sevahuber Got Hashem Tatzim Mechlaster B'Say Shar Chali Yisrael. We pick it up at the very bottom of Chav Chesam and Beis. This is the final daf of the third parak here in the Gemara and Beitzah. This is the daf for the second day of Yontif. Apologies, we did not get this up before Yontif, but here it goes. Says the Mishnah Adam L'Tabach. Again, the bottom of Chav Chesam and Beis, continuing the halachas of purchases of buying different items that might be used for Yontif on Yontif. Says the Mishnah, Lo Yomer Adam L'Tabach. A person is not allowed to say to a butcher on Yontif, Shkoli b'dinner basar, weigh for me a dinner's worth of meat. Aval sheichet umachalik beinehem. But the butcher could shecht, slaughter the animal, umachalik beinehem, and divide its meat amongst all different people. So again, what we're seeing here is there's an isser in mentioning the value, the quantity, the weight, the weekday activity. As Rashi over here so perfectly points out, something that we mentioned in the past and yesterday's shir, Rashi, in the first Rashi, the Mishnah Shokli B'dinner Basar, Rashi says, Sha'asr la'askir shame damim. That is the issue. That's what we're going to keep on saying. You're not allowed to mention the monetary value. Says the Gemara, what should you do? As long as you don't mention the price, it's allowed. So what exactly should you do? Says the Gemara, Kiha, moving over to today's daf, Daf Chavtes Amid Aleph, the Besura Amri, Tarta Upalga, Tarta, Besura Amri, in Surah they would say, Tarta Upalga Tarta. I want a tarta, it's a measurement, or a half a tarta. Vinarash is in a place, they would say, Amri, Chalka Upalga Chalka, but Medisa Amri, Uzia Upalga Uzia, Binahar Pakar, Umasa Mechasya Amri, Riva Upalga Raviva, different measurements without actually mentioning the monetary value that is necessary. Says, and actually we could, Rashi just points out that this is the standard values, standard weights in each of these places. Says the Mishnah, so that was din number one of the day, that you're not allowed to mention the price value when it comes to buying meat on Yontif. Number two, says the Mishnah, Chavtas 7 you're allowed to tell a person, you're buying meat on Yontif, can you fill up for me this vessel? But you're not allowed to mention the measurement. Again, the same exact type of item, the zilzal yontif, the ovdin dachol, it looks like buying and selling. You can mention, the measurement. Rav Yehuda says, not only could I measure weight, but you can't even use a measuring utensil. You could take a cup and say, fill up this cup for me. But you can't say, fill up a specific measuring utensil. Says the Mishnah, Ma'aseh B'Avashal ben Butnis. There was a story with Avashal ben Butnis, he would fill up his weights on Erev Yontif, and then they would be sitting there pre-made, pre-weighed, pre-measured, and on Yontif he would go and give it out. Avashal came even in Yontif you could do this. Which we'll see in the Gemara exactly what that means. Literally it means the foaming of the measurements. You can even do this during the week. The draining of the measurement. So again, these two different practices that we're seeing over here. One is to do with the foam, which just to give a simple explanation, when you pour liquids fast, it can have a foam on top. So it takes time for that foam to go down. So we pour it early in order to make sure the foam had sufficient time to go down. Number two is mitzui amidais, the draining when it comes to an oil, a viscous type of liquid. When you would pour it, some would get stuck to the side of the vessel. So they would pour it earlier to let it sit so that it have time to fully drain before Yontif. But says the Gemara, explaining exactly like we just said, my avaloi b'mida, what does the Mishnah mean? That you're not allowed to measure with a measurement on on Yantif explains the Gemara Amar Rabbi Mer Shmuel Avoloi Bekli Hamiyuchad Lamida. You can't use a measuring cup. You can't use a kli utensil that is designated for measuring. Avol Kli Ha'oimei Lamida Yamalenu. A unique differentiation, a vessel which is standing and has the potential to be used for measuring, but you never used it yet. It might be a measuring cup, but you never used it practically to measure. That you're allowed to use. If it's a cup you already measure with, then it has that stigma of a weekday, of a business activity. But if it's a cup that's oimid, it's going to be used, that is okay. Rav Yehuda's machmer says you can't even use that. It's a measuring cup. You never used it. Who cares? You would not be allowed to use that. Alma says the Gemara, with regard to Simchas Yantif, which is what we're referring to, buying items for Yantif. Rav Yehuda l'chomer, Rav Yohanan l'kula. Sounds like Rav Yehuda's machmir, because he says even a utensil which is oimid, it will eventually be used. Even that is not allowed. Sounds like Rav Yehuda's machmir, and the Rabbanan are mekel. Asks the Gemara, we learned the opposite. Now we learned to the Mishnah. This is sound familiar from yesterday, 2 days ago. Rav Yehuda Omer Shakal Adam Basar, can I get a kli? Rav Yehuda says you let away meat opposite a utensil. Who can I get a koipat? Or opposite the cutting a certain type of knife, which has a certain the cleaver. Chacham said, no, you're not going to touch the measuring utensil at all. So again, what do we see? Here we see that Chachamim are more stringent. A moment ago we said, Rav Yehuda is more stringent. Alma Rav Yehuda l'kula v'Rabbanan l'chumra. Kash Rav Yehuda kash Rabbanan adrabbanan. Answers the Gemara. The Rav Yehuda like kash is not a contradiction. Also b'sheina im l'mida. There's a unique differentiation over there. It's not oimid for midero. It's true. And this is obviously the 2 points that we see in both suggyas. On one hand, one's a measuring cup. On the other hand, one's a scale. But over there, you're not the kaipitz, the cleaver is not oimid lemid. It's not made for measuring, and therefore it's allowed. Over there, you're doing the way that people normally do during the week, and that is the reason that it is forbidden. Whereas when it comes to using the measuring cup, which hasn't been used yet, that's not the normal way that people use it in the week, and therefore it would be allowed. And that's again the two sides of the coin, weighing which is better, which is worse. But the point is, it's not going to be a contradiction that Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan, one is machmer, one is mekel, because there's differences between the two cases. Rava comes along with the second explanation. My avoloi b'midah. What is the Mishnah? What did our Mishnah mean? That you're not allowed to use a midah. Shlo yizkar lo yishay midah. It doesn't mean the actual cup, whether you're using it. Don't mention, like we keep on saying, the measurement. But according to Rava, you're allowed to even use a vessel which is used for measuring. Not one that's made, one that's actually used for measuring. Even that's going to be allowed. And on that point, that's where Rav Yehuda is going to say on the thing that's yuchad you can't use. Almos, and now it's the exact opposite question. According to Rava, what do we see? Rav Yehuda now is being machmir, saying you're not allowed to use the kli yuchad, and Rabbanan are being mekel. We learned the opposite. Again, the exact same question we had a moment ago. And I learned to the Mishnah yesterday. Rav Yehuda Shakal and Basa, can I get a kli opposite a vessel? Can I get a klipis opposite cleaver? Basically, just to understand exactly what has happened, is that according to Rava, the tables turned. According to Rava, it comes out that we have the exact same question of Rav Yehuda and the Chacham, just in the opposite way. Because according to Rava, what just happened is that Rav Yehuda said that a kliyam yuchal amida you're not allowed to use. The Chacham said you're yes allowed to use. So Rav Yehuda is being more machmir. Answers the Gemara, Rav Yehuda like kasha also b'sheinim yuchlamida ach yuchlamida. The exact same answer, the exact same differentiation between the case of measuring opposite a utensil and a cleaver versus our case of a cup, a measuring cup. But the Gemara now has to mention that in our case there is a normal way of using this measuring cup, because there are people that what they do is they serve wine in such a cup. Meaning, the Gemara is now explaining something very interesting. This is a measuring cup. So how are we going to say this is something that doesn't have the stigma? Says Gemara, because sometimes you take a measuring cup and you just use it as an extra cup. You have guests over, you need to give them a cup of wine. You have no more goblets. So you take a measuring cup and you give it to them. So says the Gemara, the mere fact that you're filling up a measuring cup is not necessarily clear that it's a weekday activity, and that would be the reason why that case would be different. Says the Gemara on the second line, Ma'asav Avashal ben Butnis. The Mishnah continued with the story with Avashal ben Butnis. He would fill his measurements before Yantif, and we have these two details in the Mishnah. One about foaming measurements, and one is making sure to empty out all the oil from the sides of the kli. And let's let the Gemara explain that point right now. Tani, we learned, he would even do this on Cholamai. Why? Because the Beitzah Beis Medrash, he wanted to make sure that they would darshan during Yantif, and he didn't want anyone to have to miss any extra Beis Medrash. Just looking for Rashi over here, and that's why you would do it. Rashi actually is a double Rashi Amud, but I can't find Rashi on the moment, so let's continue. Tanu Rabbanan, the Rabbanan learned. He would gather together 300 barrels of wine. For what reason? Because of the foaming of the measurements. He would wait for the wine to all settle so there's no foam on top. They would have 300 barrels of oil. Again, for a similar idea, to make sure it's fully emptied out, there's nothing stuck to the walls of the barrel. They bring from the Gizbarim, the Yerushalayim. Amru lahem. So they bring these measurements, and they would bring these barrels in front of the Gizbar, and they would tell the Gizbar, Yatab Zakukal Nekach, do you want these measurements? Basically, what happened is, they felt that they got these extra quantities of wine not properly. It was inappropriate that they got them, because they only got it because of the extra foaming, because of that which is stuck to the walls of the barrel. So they took all this extra, and they brought it to the Gizbar. And they would say to the Gizbar, you're not obligated to anything I'm about to say. Amru lahem. So they were, one more time. Amru lahem, the Gizbar would tell Abishal ben Butnis, would tell them, what are you doing? You don't have to return this. You're coming and saying, I got this not properly. There was the foaming, so after it went down, I had extra. There was the stuff on the sides of the wall. Said the Gizbar, it's yours. It's halachically yours to keep. Amr lahem, they would respond, we don't want it. It's true, it's ours, we don't want to keep it. Amr lahem, the Chum would say, since you want to be machmir, which is a very important rule. How do you return something when you stole from the public? Use something for the public. A need for the public. The Tanya learned in a Beitzah. If you stole, you don't know who you stole from. Do something for the public. Mind you, what is that which you could do for the public? That if there were public issues, wells and pits and whatnot, you could fill them up and you could maintain them and thereby give back to the public. Says the Gemara, that is what Abishal ben Butnis, how you try to return the extra that he felt was excessive, that he didn't get rightfully. Adabre Rav Chisda Rabbanan Ukva. Rav Chisda guided Rabbanan Ukva as they were walking, V'darish, and they darshaned as follows. Lo yimdai adam sa'irim v'itim le'be'emtai. A person should not measure barley and give it to his animal b'yantiv and yantiv. Avol, what is he allowed to do? What he's allowed to do, he's allowed to scoop up a calf or two calf and place it in front of the animal. He doesn't have to be worried. So again, he's not allowed to measure out the barley and give it to his animal, but he's allowed to scoop up something and leave it in front of his animal. Says the Gemara, and a chef is allowed to measure spices, they also put in his pot, so that the pot does not burn. Two different halachas. One halacha you're allowed to measure for cooking, another halacha you're not allowed to measure precisely for the animals, but allowed to use the measuring cup. Woman is allowed to measure flour and put it inside her dough. She wants to make sure that she'll have the appropriate manner to give off challah in a generous manner. Shmuel Amar Aser, that is forbidden. You're not allowed to measure for that purpose. Says the Gemara, Shmuel, but Shmuel Mutter. You're telling me Shmuel says it's Aser. Yeshiva Shmuel said it's Mutter. Amar Abaye Hash, the Amar Shmuel Astan Shmuel Mutter. Says Abaye, we have a contradiction. On one hand, Shmuel saying Aser. On the other hand, the Yeshiva Shmuel saying Mutter. Says the Gemara, we have to say, turning over to Amid Beis, Chavtesim and Beis, Shmuel Halacha Lamaisa Asla Shminan. Shmuel must be coming to teach me Halacha Lamaisa when he says his own statement that once we heard the yeshiva saying otherwise, and he's coming along and saying something specific, it must be that he's teaching that when someone comes to ask whether you're allowed to measure a baking, we should say no. But because his yeshiva said yes, he wants everyone to know what is the appropriate halacha. But the point is that Tosfos here points out, but you don't have to be meicha, you don't have to protest. It's like a middle interesting level. There is a level of heter, but if someone asks, it's also. But you don't have to protest if someone does it. Tana Rabbanan says the Gemara. Moving over to other types of food preparation on Yantif, ein shainin kamach Yantif. We don't re-sift your flour. You can re-sift it, double sift it on Yantif. You're allowed to re-sift it. And they both agree. Let's say you've sifted flour, and inside your sifted flour fell a pebble, fell a kisei, fell a splinter. Then they all agree shaynim, you're allowed to re-sift it, because of course now there is a purpose. It's not just an extra benefit, which would be the reason to forbid it, but there's a real purpose that you need it for cooking, so you'd be allowed to even re-sift it if a rock or some garbage fell into it. Tani Kamei Ravina, they learned in front of Ravina. He said, no, you can't re-sift it. But if a rock fell into, you can't re-sift it, but just pluck out the rock with your hand. Similar idea that he's agreeing you got to fix this flour, just don't sift it in the normal manner. Amar Aleis, Ravina said to that which one you just said you have to take it out with your hand. That's certainly forbidden. That's mamish boyer, you're taking out the garbage. They learned that the entrance in Ardai, that what Shani Kemach Yantif, the allowed to re-sift it in Yantif, like the first opinion. And even if it's not because of a problem, in general, you're allowed to re-sift it. Amrlu Rav Nachman, Paikuv Amrlu Abba. Go out and tell Abba that what Shikilu Tibusech L'Shadi Achizra. Take what you're saying and throw it on thorns. Paik Chazi, go and check. Kama Meulata Hadra Min Hardai. How many sifters are circulating to re-sift the flour in Hardai? Everyone already knows. You think you're telling a big chiddush, you re-sift it. Everyone already knows it. Devisu, Rav Yosef, the daughter of Rav Yosef, Nale Kimcha, the wife of Rav Yosef, what did I say, Rav Yosef? One more time. Devisu, Rav Yosef, yes, the wife of Rav Yosef, Nale Kimcha, how would she sift the flour? Agava de molita. On the back of the sieve, she would flip it over to do a bit of a shinoi. Amar Le Rav Yosef said to her, Chazi dana rifta ma'al yisa ba'ina. I desire fine bread. I want you to sift it normally. It's mutter. You don't have to do it in this interesting backhanded manner. You also sifted flour on the bottom of a table, again in an interesting abnormal manner. Amar Ravashi Adidana Barati Drami Barchama Mari Dovda Vilad the Chazi Minasa Law the Ovda. It's not for the fact that he saw in his father's house, she would not do it, showing us that again, this is the point of view that it's a mutter to even re-sift the flour on Yom. Says the final Mishnah of this parak, other ways of getting food on Yom. Says the Mishnah. This actually has some applications. There are some small mini marts in some, maybe in like a bungalow colony or in like a little town, that they'll keep the store open on Yontif. And this is how one would go. And if you need something to purchase for him on Yontif, that he's accustomed by him, meaning he trusts you. Give me eggs, my nuts, give me the normal number, and that is going to be allowed. Again, the number of eggs, because that's a normal way to count them at home, meaning this is not a business practice. Just like people count eggs like this in their house, you're allowed to even count it in the store. Rabbanan says the Gemara, a person could go to a shepherd that he's often by. Give me one goat or one sheep. Go to the butcher and tell him, give me a thigh, give me a shoulder. The one that fans up the animals, and tell him, give me one pigeon, give me one dove. To the baker, give me one kikar, one loaf, or one roll. Go to the storekeeper, 20 eggs, 50 nuts, 10 peaches, 5 pomegranates, and 1 esrog, you can't mention the total You cannot mention the total measurement. Again, it's exactly the exact same thing as that which we saw in our Mishnah, that you're allowed to mention a number of items because that's normal you do in your house, but you cannot mention a measurement because that's more business-like practice. Shimon ben Elazar, Aimer. You cannot mention the price. Again, like we saw in the Mishnah at the beginning of today, that once you mention a price, automatically it brings it into a weekday activity, and that's going to be forbidden, and that's the unique way. Someone wanted to purchase and get something, of course he can't pay for it, but if you wanted to tell a storekeeper, I need a few eggs, give me 5 eggs, that would be allowed, and the ruggle, he trusts you and you'll pay for him hefty yantiv. What a beautiful schos to learn such a perek over a yantiv, about the halachas of yantiv. We should do a wonderful chazara of this perek, and let's make a haschala. Let's begin the 4th perek of Beitzah. Says the Mishnah, now we're getting into other types of food preparation activities, but more particularly uvdin dechol, weekday activities. At what point is something a weekday activity and it's forbidden even on Yantiv? Says the Mishnah, you let her bring pitchers of wine from place to place, but can't bring them in a big basket or in a big bag. Avol, what are you allowed to do? Maybe you can take them on your shoulder or lefanav or hold them in front of you. And certainly the straw. Don't take a big box and put it on his back. You take the straw in your hand. And you're allowed to begin as we move over to tomorrow's Daf Lamed of Aleph. You allowed to begin with a stack of straw, not with the wood in the backyard. And this begins the unique halachas of Uvdin Dechol. When something has a weekday activity appearance, if you start carrying big boxes of soda and big bags and you're walking through the streets, that looks like a weekday, it's actually Gepaskin and Shulchan Aruch with regard to Shabbos, that you can't do that. Again, there are unique ateirim as we're going to see tomorrow, perhaps, etc. But for no reason, someone simply wants to bring home from shul a tremendous box of soda, that would be forbidden. That is his unique halacha of the Dechol. We'll pick up from here in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, tomorrow.